right, Marc David, welcome in the Transformation Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
It's an honor, I have to say, meeting you, because I've been following you for quite some time, and your work and your mission is just blows my mind.
I'm so honored. Well, I'm happy. I'm glad to be here.
Great.
And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So you're founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. I think that's a great place to start, because I think a lot of the people listening or in the Netherlands have never heard of something like the psychology of eating or your work. So could you tell us, what does it mean, the psychology of eating?
Oh, such a good question. You know, I started my career in nutrition. I had a fascination with food and nutrition from a very young age. And eventually, when I reached my teen years, when I was 19, 20 years old, I had already learned quite a bit about nutrition. I started seeing clients. And what I noticed was I could tell people what to eat and what to do so they should lose weight or be healthier. And maybe they'd come back a week or two later and say to me, I know what you told me to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. I just couldn't do it. And I remember thinking to myself, that was such a moment for me. That was a revelation to me, because I thought that all I needed to have was nutrition knowledge to help somebody. And I realized that in order to help somebody with their overeating or their binge eating or their emotional eating or their weight, that I needed to understand the mind of the eater and the heart of the eater and the psychology of the eater. And so I thought, I'll just read a book or I'll take a course. And there wasn't any. Literally, there was nothing. So I decided at some point that I would eventually write the book that I wanted to read, and that I would eventually teach the course that I wanted to take. So I went back to school. I started studying psychology and just working with people and working with small groups and just really experimenting and learning on the job. So for me, eating psychology is all about understanding who we are as eaters. And if we have an eating challenge, again, like overeating or binge eating or emotional eating, or so many people, doesn't matter what their body looks like, they might have a body image issue. They could have the perfect body according to everybody else, but still that person doesn't like their own body. So eating psychology helps us understand that. And it helps us work with people who sort of raise their hand and say, I need help with this. I need help changing these habits, changing these patterns. So eating psychology looks at the connections between my food behaviors and the rest of my life. Because what I've noticed is most people, their problem with food isn't really a food problem. So if they're overeating or emotionally eating, it's not because they have a problem with food. Usually there's something else happening in life that's driving them to eat more or driving them to turn to food for relaxation or for pleasure or to regulate their emotions.
I'm glad that you started with this, because that's my biggest struggle, and also how I found about your work is exactly this. So I know what to do. Like, I can read all the books there are about nutrition, have these diet plans, and then you stick with it for 2 days, and then the third day you just binge on whatever is available. So I found it very hard to grasp, though, how food can be a symbol for other relationships that we have in life. Maybe it's easier to start with one of the like the mechanisms, like the inner rebel, to clarify this maybe also for listeners, because that's one that I found really insightful to hear about. Like, oh, hang on, maybe this is the mechanism that's working. So could you elaborate on the inner rebel?
Sure. There are different, usually psychology tends to look at the human being as being this one person who has this one personality. And as it turns out, each of us, we probably have a number of different personalities or personas or archetypes inside of us. We have different voices inside of us. So sometimes in psychology, you'll hear psychologists talk about the inner child. It's the part of us that's still young, that's still a certain age. There's the part of you, if you're a woman, you're a daughter. You might be a mother. You might be a best friend to somebody. You might be a student. You might be a scientist. You might be a bitch sometimes. You might be, there's so many voices in us. And in any given moment, there's a particular voice inside of us, or persona or archetype, that tends to sit at the head of the table and make our food choices. So if I say to myself, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do, I know what I'm supposed to eat, that's probably the adult mind speaking. That's the parent in me speaking, the adult in me speaking, maybe the nutritionist in me speaking. Okay, I know I'm supposed to do this and this and this. It's a mature voice in me. But oftentimes there's another voice, and it depends on the person. Everybody's different. But a lot of people, what's happening is their inner rebel that you mentioned might take over when they're making food choices. The rebel inside of me is the part of me that I just want to break the rules. It's like a teenager. It's like a 16-year-old. They don't want to do what you tell them to do. You say to do something, they do the opposite. And the rebel in us, it's a good voice. It's a good archetype, because it's the rebel in us that thinks originally, that's more radical, that thinks outside the box, that's not afraid to have my own thoughts and do things my own way. But oftentimes, if the rebel in me is making my food choices, it can be the immature rebel who's saying, well, I'm just going to eat whatever I want to eat because I'm going to die anyway someday, so I might as well just do whatever I want to do. And we don't even realize that that's the voice in us that's making our food choices. So then sometimes we just have to ask the question, when I sit down to eat, or when I choose what to eat, who is making that choice? For a lot of people, it's not the rebel, but it's more like the inner child. And oftentimes what happens is, let's say you were 12 years old, and maybe you were a little chubby or fat, and kids made fun of you at school. And then your parents said to you, you're too chubby, you're too fat, you need to lose weight. Nobody's going to like you. And when a child hears that, they get very upset, and they think, oh my goodness, I have to do this. I have to lose weight. Otherwise, nobody's going to love me. My parents aren't going to love me. My friends aren't going to love me. Everything's going to be bad. So what can happen is you can now be 35 or 45 or 55 years old, but that 12-year-old voice is still saying, oh, if I don't eat the right things, nobody's going to love me. And oftentimes we have to sort of notice that voice is making the decisions and begin to update ourselves and to start to bring in another voice that we want to strengthen, or that we wish to make our choices. The inner adult, the inner parent, or the king in me, the queen.
Sounds like, okay, let's do this. And then we start to eat, and then the meal is finished. And like, oh, shit, I should have invited maybe the adult in me. So how can we create more consciousness around these decisions and around, well, dinner time, basically?
Yes. I love that question. How can we create more consciousness? Because in a strange way, the question and the answer are almost the same thing. Meaning, a lot of us are making choices out of our habits. We're on automatic pilot. We just do things when it comes to food. And we'll continue to make automatic choices. We'll continue to let the rebel in me make choices or the child in me make choices. And until we introduce consciousness, well, think of this, any unwanted habit. If you and I have an unwanted habit, let's say you smoke and you don't want to smoke. Let's say you overeat and you don't want to overeat. Or you make choices that you end up regretting. Usually those habits that we don't want, they're automatic and they're repetitive and they're unconscious. You don't think to yourself, oh, I'm going to sit down to this meal and I'm going to eat too much and I'm going to make really bad choices. No, it just happens because it's automatic, it's repetitive, it's unconscious. So the way to change any unwanted habit is to introduce consciousness. Or introduce awareness or introduce presence. I'm using all those words to mean the same thing. And consciousness means I ask questions. Meaning a question might be, before I sit down to dinner, okay, what am I going to eat for dinner? What does my body want? What would be best for me? What would be the best choices for me? And how do I wish to be? Who do I wish to be as an eater? Meaning, a lot of times let's say we're taught to eat fast. And that's because the people around us eat fast. And it's a habit that many people pick up when they're young. So we automatically eat fast. And eating fast is one of the main reasons why a lot of people will overeat or binge eat or emotionally eat. Because if we're eating fast, the brain can't register taste, it can't register pleasure, it can't register satisfaction or aroma. And these are all sensations that the brain and body are looking for from food. So in order to slow down with food, I have to introduce consciousness. I have to choose and say, this is who I wish to be as an eater. I wish to be present. I wish to get pleasure from the food I'm eating. And then it becomes a practice. So there's usually no button to push that makes everything change right away. There's no pill to take. It's always about a practice and practicing being present with food, practicing listening to my body for feedback, practicing, making conscious choices with food.
I love what you said, that consciousness is asking questions. I've never heard it like this. And when you said it, I immediately thought yeah, exactly. That's what happens. It's just, okay, what questions am I asking? Who do I want to be? So thanks for that insight. And I want to circle back to, I believe it's not really unconscious. For example, the inner rebel resonates with me, and the easiest way to bring my listeners aboard is to show you, to share you my struggles, I guess. So I know beforehand that I'm going to go to the supermarket, I'm going to buy pizza or chips or crisps. It's not really that unconscious. There's this way in between, like I still don't do it or struggle with it. So what to do if there is consciousness, but you still just find it really hard to be nice to yourself, I guess?
Yes. Janet, so oftentimes we do a behavior that we say we don't wish to do, because we're getting a benefit from it. It's serving us in some way. So part of change is asking questions such as, how does this unwanted behavior, how am I actually benefiting from this? And how does it serve me? So to me, even if okay, I'm going to go to the supermarket and I'm going to buy these foods that I say I don't want to buy, but there's a part of me that's just still choosing it. So there's a part of you that benefits. One part of us that benefits, and I'm not saying this is you, but here's some examples of how you could be benefiting from that behavior. There's something psychologists call immediate gratification. When you and I are infants, when we're tiny little babies, what we know is immediate gratification, meaning you look at any little infant and they can be crying, they could be screaming, they could be yelling, and as soon as mama comes and mama gives the baby the bottle or the breast, in an instant, the baby relaxes. The baby stops crying and it's a happy baby, and you go from crying and screaming to happy baby, all because the baby got bottle or breast and it was being held by mom. So we learn from a young age, immediate gratification is built into the system, meaning I want this immediately. And that's what a baby is supposed to do because they can't talk. They can't explain to you what's going on for them. All they could do is scream and cry when they want something or moan and groan. And what happens is in our genetics, in our genetic memory from all our ancestors, as well as in our own lifetime, we have the memory, feel bad, eat food, feel better. And a lot of times what is happening is we're looking as adults for immediate gratification. And we're not thinking about the long-term consequences. So if you're talking to a 5-year-old and you say to a 5-year-old, no, I can't give you cake and ice cream every day for your meals because that means you're going to grow up and you're going to be unhealthy. That 5-year-old doesn't care about 10 years or 20 or 30 years from now. They want immediate gratification now. They can't think into the future. So there's a part of us that I want what I want, when I want it, and I want it right now. And there are certain foods that make us feel good right now. A lot of those foods don't happen to be good for us if you ate them all the time, or they might be foods that you're trying to choose not to eat. So part of it is learning. Part of it is you're learning how to let go of immediate gratification and make choices that work for you long term. So that's a piece of it. I think the other part is oftentimes, as you said before, the rebel in us wants to break the rules. So it's oftentimes looking at what's the part of you that wants to break the rules? When did that part of you first show up? Meaning a lot of us, if you spend your childhood and you're a good boy or a good girl and you do everything right, sometimes there's a part of us that just wants to break the rules. And we don't start breaking the rules until we get older. So a piece of the challenge maybe is to learn how to use your rebellious nature in ways that actually serve you, and to choose to see, okay, how could I use the rebel in me just in my work? How could I use it in my relationships, in my friendships? How could I use it in any volunteer work that I do? Because the rebel in us needs expression, and sometimes people just express it with how they eat, but they're not looking at how the rebel can function in other parts of their life. Is that at all helpful for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. one follow-up question that I have about that, because I remember also from your course, because you have a beautiful course that I would like to also point listeners to, is when dealing with that and trying to let go and stop dieting, for example, is moving towards a more intuitive way of eating. Mm-hmm. And then there's this phase like, oh, but when is this me being intuitive and just going maybe with not so good food, but just not restricting myself? And when is it intuitive, and when is it just me being sabotaging myself?
Yes, so such a good question. First of all, I want to answer that question, but I want to start with many people. We read books, we get on the internet, and we hear, oh, this is the right way to eat. Don't eat sugar. Don't eat gluten. Don't eat dairy. Don't eat meat, or eat meat, whatever it is. And what happens, or don't eat carbs. And then what happens is we'll often adopt a diet or a way of eating that is too difficult to follow and actually doesn't work for us or doesn't work for the human body. There's not a lot of people who can follow a highly regimented diet that has no pleasure and no fun for a very long period of time. So part of it is just noticing when we're choosing an extreme way to eat. Now, I don't know about the Netherlands, but in the United States for many decades, the doctors and the scientists were telling everybody, you have to eat low fat, low fat, low fat. Maybe even try no fat. And what happens is people would eat low fat or no fat diets, and then they'd find themselves binge eating. And they would binge eat on anything and everything. And the reason they're binge eating is because fat, EFAs, essential fatty acid, they're essential for life. You need them. It's a necessary macronutrient for the body. So when we're not getting enough of it, the body goes, I'm not getting enough of this essential nutrient. The brain is not smart enough to tell us, hey, you're not getting enough fat in your diet. The brain simply screams at us, hungry. And then so you're driven to eat more. And you just want to gorge on anything because all the brain is able to tell us is, I'm ravenous, I'm starving because I'm missing a nutrient, and just go out there and eat as much food as you can so you can survive. So brain and body are trying to help us survive. So a lot of people are following diets, even if a lot of people try to eat very low carb. And you're going to need carbs, you're going to need fiber. And chances are you've grown up with it. So if you're eating no carb for a week, you're likely going to rebound. So a lot of people try to go on an all or nothing diet. I'm either going to be 100% good, no sugar, no dairy, no wheat, no this, no that, or I'm just going to eat whatever I want. So that mentality, that way of thinking, all or nothing, never works. And what I have found is a lot of people need to build in fun foods or pleasurable foods or even forbidden foods into their diet and stop making it so forbidden, because the moment you tell the brain, don't do something, the brain is wondering, well, why can't I do that? Well, maybe I should do that. It's the old, back to the Old Testament, don't eat the apple. And what's the first thing Adam and Eve do when they get a chance? They eat the apple. And that's the human mind. It wants to explore. So you mentioned intuitive eating, and intuitive eating, the way I see it, it's the act of asking yourself, asking your own body wisdom, what would best nourish me right now? What's my body asking for? Body's very intelligent. We have a separate yet interconnected nervous system in the gut called the enteric nervous system. People call it the brain in the belly. Mm-hmm. And there's as many nerve cells in your digestive system, nervous system. There's as many brain cells there as there are in your spinal cord. So meaning there's a lot of intelligence. And that's why, In my country, we often have a saying, we'll say, I had a gut feeling about that. So we don't say, I had an elbow feeling, or we don't say, I had a kidney feeling. We say, I had a gut feeling, because our gut is literally talking to us. So intuitive eating is, we're asking the body, we're asking our gut wisdom, what would work for me? And yeah, you might get an answer that says, eat ice cream all day. So then, sure, eat ice cream all day and see what happens. And you listen for feedback. Okay, I listened to my intuition. How do I feel? Did that work for me? Do I have more energy? Is my digestion better? So it's not about getting it right all the time. It's about learning. It's like anything else. It's a practice. You want to learn any sport, you have to practice it. And you're going to make mistakes. So it's really, intuitive eating is learning on the job, but we're always listening for feedback afterwards. Okay, how did that work for me? So part of it is learning how to trust ourselves, because really, to me, the question you ask is, how can I learn to trust myself? Trusting yourself doesn't mean you're always going to make the right choice about anything in life, not just food, about anything, about people, about money, about business, about work. You're going to make choices that work for you. You're going to make choices that don't. Trusting myself means even when I make a choice that doesn't work, can I trust that I'll recover from that and that I will stand by myself, that I won't self-reject or punish myself or beat myself up, and I'll just continue to work on myself so I can get better.
And I also hear you say that on the one hand, like the brain just screams hungry, so it's not so smart. So is it then that these thoughts or these cravings are not so smart, and the gut is just another way of telling us? I mean, I find it so difficult to. Well, I guess it's the trust. Like, oh, my body will know what to do when there's so much. On the one hand, it's not so smart, but on the other hand, it is smart.
Yes.
Sorry, it's a very not so well stated question, but I hope you know what I'm asking.
No, I think you put it very well. And the body is the same as us. I'm smart in the places I'm smart. And there are certain places or certain times I don't make good decisions. So that's what being a human being is all about. So it's really taking away right and wrong. It's taking away being perfect and understanding that if you're a human being on planet Earth, in this day and age, we are learning still how to be eaters. There's no exact science of nutrition. People think that there's a perfect diet or a perfect way to eat out there. And there's not. There are as many different legitimate approaches to nutrition as there are people on the planet, meaning the diet that works for your body, your genetic type, the climate that you live in, the season, your level of health, your age. It's every person is unique. So part of it is we're all, on one level, if you're interested in nutrition and food and health, then to me, we should consider ourselves nutritional explorers. We're scientists of our own body and we're learning on the job. So we're not going to know 100%. Most animals instinctively know what to eat. Human beings, we need to be taught how to eat. And even then, a lot of times we have to unlearn what we were taught. So it's complicated. It's not easy being a human being and being an eater because there's so much conflicting nutrition information out there. I think what happens is a lot of people are very confused because they hear being a vegan or a vegetarian is good, but if you follow a paleo diet, that's also good, which is the opposite of being a vegan or a vegetarian. Or then you could see some people say you should eat raw foods or you should eat the Mediterranean diet. There's always going to be some new diet. And what I've noticed is every single diet or nutritional approach, it has some nuggets of wisdom. It has some goodness to it that you can potentially apply to yourself. You don't have to do the entire system. Because every expert, they're going to give you their system and they're going to give you scientific proof of why their system works. But everything contradicts one another. So that's just the state of nutritional science. It's a young science. And we just have to get on board with, there's not going to be one true expert that's going to tell me the one true way to eat for the rest of my life, because your body's going to change anyway. And your needs are going to change. Your desires change. Your where you live changes. Your lifestyle changes. And as your lifestyle changes, you exercise more, you need to eat different, or you might need to eat more. If you're sitting at a desk all day, you might need to eat less. So the body is constantly adapting and changing. So I think it's just our job to do our best to notice that and to, like you were saying, listen to my intuition based on things that I've read, based on things that I've learned, and experiment. And if I make a mistake, it's not such a big deal.
It's funny, when I did the course, you would expect a lot of stuff about proteins and carbs and fats and all the macronutrients. And I think it was like 5% of the course. For me, it was really like a portal or a gateway to a more spiritual side of me. And in retrospect, while preparing for this interview, I'm like, it's not eating psychology, it's just human psychology, basically, because it's not the psychology of eating, but the psychology of us, of being. What is the role of spirituality and self-knowledge in this, for a lot of people, like big issues, overeating, body image, and you want to start with the scale and with the food and with the diet, and maybe we can start another way, like a more spiritual way, or have another entry point.
Yeah, such a good question. I think what's important is that when we look at our relationship with food from a more spiritual place, then we can see it differently. Meaning this. Most people think, well, if I'm overeating or if I'm binge eating or if I have extra weight, there's something wrong with me. I have a problem. I have an issue. Something's bad. I'm broken. And I take the complete opposite approach, that every challenge that we face with food or health is here to teach us. It's here to help us grow. So my job is to ask myself, okay, if I'm overeating, how is that a great teacher for me? Because I'm looking at it from a standpoint of everything in my life. If I look at it from a standpoint of spiritual psychology, everything in my life that happens, good or bad, is here to teach me, especially the challenging things. So it's all here to help me grow as a person. It's here to help me be a better human being. It's here to help me step into my fullest self-expression. That's what our challenges are for. And that's what our eating challenges are for. So that's what I, train our coaches or our professionals in is how to help a person get to that place where they can see, my weight, sure, you want to lose weight. And I want to help people lose weight, or sure, you want to stop binge eating. I want to help them stop binge eating. But first we have to see how it's a great teacher for you. What is it trying to tell you? For a lot of people, their emotional eating, it's not a food problem. It's because maybe they're unhappy in their marriage. They're unhappy with their girlfriend, their boyfriend. They're unhappy with their job. So what do I do if I'm unhappy in a part of my life around money. I'm unhappy with my parents. You eat. Because remember, instant gratification, feel bad, eat food, feel better. So really, I don't need to so much be working on my emotional eating. I need to be looking at the place where the emotional eating is born from, which is, oh, wow, I don't have such good communication in my relationship. I'm not satisfied. Maybe we need help. Maybe I need to be more honest. Maybe I need to find my voice. Whatever it is. I think another way to look at our relationship with food from a spiritual perspective is to ask ourselves, really, what do I want from food? Like really, like who do I want to be as an eater? Because if you look at it this way, no matter what you eat, what kind of diet you follow, every diet, every nutritional approach ultimately has the same result, which is death. We're all going to die. So there's no food you could eat or diet you're going to follow that's going to make you live forever. And yeah, some diets and some ways of eating can make you healthier for sure, but even that's not guaranteed. I know people who eat well, they exercise, they have a great lifestyle, and they get sick at a young age. And you just don't know when it's going to happen. So asking myself, what do I want from my relationship with food? What do I want food to give me? For me personally, I say to myself, I want to be as healthy as I can because I like having energy. I like having my brain power. I like being able to feel like I can express myself, that I'm sharp. So those are values of mine, like health and energy and being sharp. So I can feel like an effective person in the world. I have a better experience of life when I'm feeling healthier. Therefore, I like to eat foods that give me the best chance to be healthy. But you know something? I also value my relationships. I value pleasure. I value going out and being with friends. So there's times when I might eat things that, I wouldn't eat every day. But if I'm with family or friends or I'm at a holiday dinner, there's certain things that I might do just so I can be part of the crowd. Because it's a value of mine to be connected to the people around me. So it's also a value of mine to be aware and to be present and to notice when I'm doing things unconsciously that don't serve me. So that's a value. And so I apply that value to food. Am I doing things unconsciously with food that don't serve my higher purpose? So my higher purpose is to be the best person I can be. How can food support that? Without me trying to be a perfectionist, because I think that's where people get caught. They think they need to be perfect. And as human beings, I think a good spiritual approach is we're very imperfect. And we make mistakes and we do dumb things. And sometimes, even though we have the best intentions, we don't eat the right food. And you could either punish yourself for that and hate yourself for that and constantly have negative self-talk. But if you have a spiritual approach to life, in my spiritual approach to life, I don't want to be verbally abusive to people or verbally violent to them. I don't want to be in judgment of people. I don't want to speak ill. But I also have to apply that to myself.
Yeah.
So a lot of times what happens is a lot of people are in a battle with food or they're in a battle with their body because internally they're in self-judgment. Mm-hmm. I don't look good enough. I need to lose weight here or there. And if I lose the weight, then I'll love myself and everybody else will love me and I'll be perfect and I'll be happy. But I've never seen anybody get there. Like as soon as they hit their perfect weight, then everything is great. Their life is perfect. The perfect guy or the perfect girl comes along and they live happily ever after. I just don't see it.
I haven't seen it either. if it's okay with you, I want to go to a quote that I found of yours that I really find fascinating. You mentioned addiction is a hiding place for sensitive people. It's a quote that, I don't know, it just resonated with me. But maybe you could elaborate. What does that mean?
Yes. You know, I think there's a lot of ways we can talk about addiction. Many ways we can talk about addiction. And one way to talk about it, and I'm not saying this is absolute, but one way to talk about addiction is that a lot of us as human beings, we're very sensitive. And we grow up in a world that's oftentimes insensitive. The world can be mean, it can be cruel, it can be difficult. You can have all kinds of great skills and wonderful talents that would allow you to help people, but the world doesn't, just roll out the red carpet and say, oh, here's the perfect job for you, and here's all the money you need, and here's everything that you need to be happy. So we're born into families sometimes that aren't healthy. We have relationships with our parents sometimes that are very challenging. We have circumstances where we've been harmed physically or emotionally, or some people, their parents die young. Some people, are born with, ailments, diseases. So life isn't easy, is what I'm trying to say. And when we become addicted to something like alcohol, like a drug, you can become addicted to, surfing on the internet. You can become addicted to just wanting to solve every problem with food. And really what's underneath that is that we're very sensitive human beings, and we're looking for a way to feel a deeper connection. So when we turn to alcohol, it's because life is challenging and we're looking for a way to feel more connected to ourselves. So you drink the alcohol and you momentarily feel better. You take the drug. It makes you feel relaxed. It connects you to yourself. Maybe it even connects you and it makes you feel comfortable in the world. So usually an addiction is a deeper hunger for connection. And that might be connection with others, like real love connection, intimate connections. It could be connection to a higher power, to a spiritual power, to God, to whatever. And usually it's the sensitive people who find themselves addicted, because the world's a hard place to get through.
Yeah. And you mentioned a couple of times the feeling of pleasure and relaxation and the relationship with our bodies, and here as well. What are some practices that people can do to help them feel more in their bodies, so not rely on food as much?
Such a great question. I think, Jeanette, what happens is so many people, we think that when I have the perfect body through diet and exercise, then I'm going to be in my body somehow. Then I'm going to just feel really good. I'm going to walk with confidence, and I'm going to just feel so much pleasure being in my body. And the only time we really feel pleasure being in our body is when we feel pleasure being in our body. You can weigh 200 kilos and have pleasure in your body. It doesn't matter what age you are or what weight you are. You could be lying in bed dying, and you could have moments of pleasure in your body somehow. I can feel pleasure in my body having a good memory. I can feel pleasure in my body if I'm having a real conversation that feels good. There's so many ways we can start being in our body now and not promising ourselves that I'll be in my body at a future time when I lose all this weight. Because what happens is people end up in their heads. They're constantly thinking, I'm constantly worrying. I'm worrying about my weight. I'm worrying about food. I'm worrying about diet. So when I'm doing a lot of worrying, my energy is up here. My energy is not in here. So Usually with my clients, at some point, I'll ask them to write a list. Everything in your life that makes you feel good. Everything in your life that gives you pleasure. People, places, things, thoughts, beliefs, foods, exercises, experiences. Oh, I love, just walking my dog outside. I just feel so good. I'm walking, I'm with my dog, I breathe. Some people it's swimming. Some people it's the bicycle. Some people it's walking in nature. Some people it's a special spot in nature. Some people it's dance. Some people it's yoga. But what makes you feel good about being in your body? Forget about how many calories you're burning. Forget about, is this exercise going to make me slim? What makes you feel good to be alive? And so I'll have my clients write that list, and then I'll say, okay, look at that list and check off what are the things you can do every day. What are some of the things you can do once every few days, once a week, once a month? And it's learning how to embody more by doing the things that we say makes me feel good.
It's great advice. I'm going to start keeping a list right after this recording. Well, of course, we've been in the COVID era for almost a year now, and COVID kilos is kind of a saying here in the Netherlands. I'm not quite sure if you have it in the US as well, but is there something you would like to tell people that are struggling right now because they might be overeating and worrying about the weight that they're gaining? So is there something you would like to share?
Yeah, I think, such a good question. I think the first important thing to tell ourselves is that if you gained weight during COVID, you have a good reason. It's not that there's something wrong with you, because these are very difficult times, extremely difficult. And for some of us, it's really difficult because we've lost our income or our jobs or our businesses or maybe loved ones, but it's a very difficult time. So it makes perfect sense to me that during such a time, especially if you have to stay in a lot and you're not going out, or you're feeling stressed, we turn to food. So I think first and foremost, it becomes a practice in self-forgiveness. Because a lot of times what happens is, okay, what do I got to do? I have to, exercise really hard, or I have to punish myself, or I have to beat up myself every time I look in the mirror. And I think we have to find more compassion and make sure that we do our best to minimize self-attack, minimize self-rejection, and just know that we can return to a place of compassion before we try to lose weight. I think the first place to go is, can I be compassionate with myself as opposed to beat myself up? Because if I'm trying to now lose weight by hating myself, I find that seldom works. People want to lose weight so they can be happier. That's the one reason people want to lose weight. If I lose weight, I'm going to be happier. But then what happens is we do all these weight loss strategies that make us very unhappy. And we expect that while we're doing this diet that makes me unhappy, exercise that makes me unhappy, looking in the mirror and speaking unkindly to myself, that makes me unhappy, we think that that's going to end up in a result of happiness. It doesn't make sense. So
saying like this, it sounds really crazy, but that's what we do,
Yes. So we have to realize that if I want the end result of happiness, then I have to have a journey that has happiness in it. So if I'm going to try to lose weight during this time, how do I make it a more positive and joyful experience? And I'm not saying that's easy, but that's the question I have to ask myself. How do I make it more positive and joyful? Maybe it means that I'm cooking better meals for myself. Maybe it means that I'm having close friends over for dinner or for meals where it's very supportive. Maybe it means, finding a friend that you can exercise with that, that experience feels good to you. So how can I make my weight loss journey? How can I make the journey itself fun? How can I make it pleasurable? How can it include more happiness? I think it's going to be different for each one of us, but I know for sure that if we're trying to lose weight because we're hating ourselves, that usually ends up in a destination of I'm still hating myself somehow.
Yeah, one of the anecdotes I remember also from your courses, and what struck me, like, I don't want to be that 85-year-old that's still like, oh, if I just would lose 5 kilos, then I would be really happy. Like, no, I don't want to age like that. I want to be happy.
Yes.
And yeah. I have a strange question maybe, but what is our obsession with our tummies? I find, and it's so strange, I find myself checking my tummy in the mirror when I was in high school or at my job. I would go to the toilet, and then when there's no one there in the mirror, check. It's so silly. What is this tummy obsession?
I think what happens is from a young age, we're conditioned or brainwashed by the media in terms of how we should look in order to be acceptable. And we don't even realize how much we get the message from a young age that here's what the ideal body looks like. And the ideal bodies for women are always slender. And these days, the ideal bodies for women, they always have, a tight belly, or they have, strong ab muscles. And for men, it's always been that way. Back since really in the USA, since the 1950s, we're constantly being shown images of this is what a man's supposed to look like. I think on top of that, what happens is that there's a part of us that knows that the midsection is the center of our being. So it's actually it's actually in Japan they call the midsection the hara, Hara, and they look at it as the seat of power. They look at it, the midsection is where all your balance comes from. These days, you'll often hear, we'll use the term core exercise to strengthen your core. And the core muscles and the core of our body is, first of all, the core is your digestive system. So it's where you take in your food, and you have to take in something from the outside that's not even you, bring it into your belly, break it down, pulverize it, extract what you need, get rid of what you don't need. So the digestive and eliminative system has to do that. Also, remember we talked about how the brain in the belly, the enteric nervous system, has a lot of wisdom. So all I'm trying to say is there's a lot of action in the middle of the body. And there's a part of us that knows that the midsection is important. In Latin, the midsection is called solar plexus. Solar plexus means solar, sun. Plexus is like gathering place. So it's a gathering place for the sun's energy. So what happens is, I think when we're shown images of tight abs with no body fat, a part of the brain thinks, oh, that's how you have an evolved midsection. It's just tight and muscular. Whereas really what an evolved midsection is, it's intelligent. It's working for you. Your digestion is working. Your elimination is working. You're able to bring breath into that part of your body. And when we move from our core, we're literally more effective in any sport. We're more effective in any exercise. And there's a certain pleasure when the core feels strong. Strong doesn't have to mean like 6-pack abs. It doesn't have to mean, everything looks like it's steel and has no fat, but then we get hooked by certain images. You know this. You can be surfing on the web and there'll be an image of a person, a woman, a man, an animal that just catches your attention. Some images are very powerful and they can catch our attention, and depending on how that image is being presented to us, it can condition the mind in a not so positive way. A lot of my clients who have a challenging body image, they don't like their body, I ask them, stop reading magazines, stop watching TV for a while, don't go on social media, don't look at everybody showing off their beautiful body. Like, let it go for a while, because it's too much for the brain. It's too much input. It's too much stimulation, because we are very sensitive to images. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my best attempt at it.
While you were talking, I realized a couple of months ago I removed my fitting mirror from the bedroom. I put it in another room. So, okay, if I want to look how my clothes look, I just go there, because looking at yourself, like every time you go to bed, you dress, etc. There's this judgment going on, of course. And I just realized, like, oh, hang on, I forgot about it. And now I realize I feel so much better. And that's probably because I'm not looking at myself constantly all the time, which is a more relaxing way. It's more relaxing.
Yeah. Yeah, for some people, that's just very helpful, because we're so accustomed to looking in the mirror and judging.
Yeah.
And we learn that from a very young age from the world. Look in the mirror and judge yourself. Look in the mirror and speak unkindly. So, yeah, it could be, it's almost like you're taking a vacation from automatic self-judgment. And when we do that, we start to heal. And we start to let go of that old conditioning. It's very difficult. I just want to say it's so many people have this challenge. And I used to think it was just America, but it's all over the world now. It's all over the world.
It's all over.
So many different cultures. Self-judgment about how we look. And when we have that, we can't become powerful people. We can't become fully self-expressed people. We can't reach our potential because we're constantly stuck in self-judgment, and we don't really develop ourselves in the best way that we can. I personally, I believe that each one of us is here to really find our fullest self-expression, to be the best you that you could possibly be. And we can't do that if I'm in constant self-attack and self-judgment. But that's what the world teaches us. So it takes a lot of effort to undo that conditioning.
And it takes time. I mean, if I could go back to myself 4 years ago when I did the training, you just want, okay, well, I'm going to read this, practice this, listen to this, and then I know. And then, of course, it's a pitfall, this instant gratification pitfall again. But now looking back 4 years later, like, oh yeah, now I get it. And now I'm exactly the same way, but just happy with myself. It's so strange. Yeah. Like the body has shifted, but it's more me being relaxed and happy with it, which makes me think my body looks better, even though like the measurements are exactly the same. Yes, it's just me looking at it and being happy instead of looking at it and just pointing out all the areas that I want to improve. But it takes time, and I think that's what a lot of us forget, like how much time it takes to reprogram yourself and unwean all these unwanted processes that go on.
Yes, I think that's such a good point, that it does take time, and it takes a certain commitment. And that's the work that we have to do if we want to reach our potential. Reaching our potential takes work, and the work isn't always easy. And a lot of the work is unlearning. It's not learning new facts. It's not like you have to learn 10,000 new pieces of nutrition, chemistry, and information and facts. No, a lot of what we're doing is unlearning. We're unlearning the habit of speaking unkindly to ourselves. We're unlearning all the ways that we can self-judge. And like you said, as we unlearn that, something takes its place, and you actually do look better to yourself.
Yeah. And every time sometimes I step on the scale and I expect it to be like less, and I'm exactly the same. And even my boyfriend comments like, "Oh, you look really good. Like, have you lost weight, or what are you doing?" Like, no, just me. But I think, yeah, it's really nice. Wrapping up a little bit, I'm an avid book reader. I love books. My readers love books as well. So I was just wondering, what was the last book that you bought for someone else, or that you bought for someone as a gift?
Oh, what a great question. In this realm that we're talking about, the last book I recommended to somebody is called The Gift of Our Compulsions by Mary O'Malley. And it's just a beautiful window into, why we do things that we say we don't want to do, and how we can find the gift in that. So it's a very positive perspective on our, habitual or compulsive nature.
That was one of because I've read it a couple of years ago, and maybe it's too big a question to ask in a short time, but how can this compulsion, this unwanted impulsive behavior, how can this bring our freedom? Because you would expect, no, I have to let go of that. So how can that possibly bring me freedom?
Yes, I think the way we are designed, once again, is that every challenge that we face is actually here to help us grow. So in the example of food, if I'm turning to food habitually to make myself feel better, and if that's making me feel uncomfortable, if that's making me gain weight, if that's making me feel heavy, then I have to ask myself, okay, is there a gift in here for me? And if so, what is the gift? And the gift is, first and foremost, is I'm going to the food so I can be happy. What I'm wanting is happiness. What I'm wanting is relief. What I'm wanting is to feel a sense of connection, because when we're sitting and eating and trying to emotionally soothe ourselves with food, we actually have a moment of connection. And so then the question becomes, well, how else? How else can I feel connected? How can I feel more connected to myself? How can I feel more connected to others? I'll say briefly that I had a client who came to see me, and her complaint was, I'm eating too much sugar. I'm addicted to sugar. Sugar is my problem. And after the second session, I told her, listen, I said, sugar is not your problem. Sugar is actually your solution to your problem. You're going to sugar. And so she reaches for sugar, 2 or 3 times a day. And I said to her, sugar, once I learned about her life, she was unhappy with her job. She's not in a relationship. She was engaged to be married like 15 years ago, and they broke up, and she hasn't dated since in 15 years. She's not happy with her social life. She has all these things that she loves to do, like hobbies and dance, but she doesn't do them. And I said to her, compulsively going to sugar, that's actually your solution. That's the best part of your day. I can't take that away from you. Nobody can. Instead, what you need to do, the gift here is that you need to make your life work. You need to say, okay, how much longer do I think I have to live? And how do I want to live my life? So am I going to date? Am I going to look for a relationship? Am I going to create better friendships? Am I going to go visit the friends and family that don't live near me, but I'm closest with because I love them? Am I going to look to change my job or make the one I'm in a better experience? So the gift was, oh, you need to look at your life, not get rid of sugar.
What I hear is like this big invitation to look beyond food and look inside and just go on this journey of self-discovery and what makes me happy and which is, like I said, for me it was a nice portal into a more spiritual way of being and looking at myself and looking at the world. So yeah. So it's been a great journey.
I'm so glad for you.
Looking forward to our future post-COVID, because I think, of course, this will be hopefully this big summer of love when we're all released from our homes. What are your biggest concerns looking to the future? Maybe even not related to COVID, but just in general.
You know, my biggest concern is that we are living in a world where it feels like so much of everything is going online, and there's social media and there's social distancing. And I'm just concerned that humans aren't connecting. I'm concerned that we're not out in nature. I'm concerned that we're spending too much time in the virtual world and not in the real world, and we're losing our ability to be intimate with each other and intimate with the world and intimate with nature. You know, where more people are working from home now and they're shopping from home. Everything is delivered to you. That concerns me, because I think as human beings, we need connections and we need intimacy just with the world. And I'm just hoping that people find ways to celebrate life and not be afraid of it and not be living in fear all the time.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I hope so too. Mm-hmm. Let's do this. Is there anything else you would like my listeners and viewers to share with them, or maybe where can they find them, and what can you offer them if people want to delve deeper in this topic?
Oh, thank you for asking. You know, it's the website for my for the Institute for the Psychology of Eating is called psychologyofeating.com. So psychologyofeating.com, it'll tell you about the training program where I train professionals in how to do the kind of work that we've been speaking about, working with clients with, weight issues, body image, overeating, binge eating, emotional eating, and nutrition-related health issues. I have a couple of lovely books out there, The Slow Down Diet and Nourishing Wisdom. So those are also good resources. It's a good place to start. And we have plenty of free resources. Our Facebook page, just get on Facebook, Institute for the Psychology of Eating. I'm always doing Facebook Lives and, posting interesting content. That's all for free. So it's a great way to just, learn more.
Great. I'll make sure to put a link to the books and the website also in the show notes so people can find it very easily.
Oh, that's so generous. Thank you.
No, well, you for spending some time with me and answering my questions. So thank you for that, and also for the great work and what you put out there in the world.
I so appreciate it. It's been such a good conversation with you.
Thank you.